The Irrational Confidence Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it was an amazing, exciting week number 10. A lot of upsets. If you are a ranked team going on the road, ooh, boy, howdy. That was a little tough. But the man, my co-host, who just spent his whole week boycotting Tom Petty, but he's back after the big win in Jacksonville. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Boycotting Tom Petty, the Heartbreakers. Yeah, it was a good weekend. College football, every single week, you got to strap it up. We're definitely seeing depth being tested on rosters across the board. Focus of players moving in November, injuries coming into play. Who is really ready for the stretch run now from November to championship weekend in December, and to capture one of the elusive playoff spots that hang in the balance. But we're coming down the stretch now.
Now, Fresh, legitimately, you work out every day or go for runs and stuff like that. During Florida Georgia week, will you skip any time Tom Petty comes on your playlist?
Well, I don't have a playlist. I don't listen to music when I'm working out. I just sort of get my thoughts. But I would. It's not the he hated living in Gainesville, so it's kind of like it's ridiculous anyway. I have no issue with Tom Petty. I can listen to his music, whatever. I won't back down. But actually, he hated living in Gainesville, so that's the irony of the whole thing. I wouldn't have a problem if it came on a playlist and had one.
Well, there you go, everyone. Fresh does not work out to music and works out in sheer silence. Okay, Fresh, before we get into the fun part that we have for this week going on, we have something that we did a little bit differently with this week. But what were before we get into that, what were your takeaways from week 10?
Well, first of all, I was very, very impressed with the Ohio State defense.
Yeah.
That offense, the passing game struggle. Will Howard, there's still progress he's been made in that aspect. But that defense for Ohio State, especially in the red zone, obviously getting the interception, maybe some fortune there, some great play by the cornerback, get the pick in the corner of the end zone, and then obviously the fourth down stop, really to seal the ball game. That was very. You could definitely see the growth from the Oregon game. Now, Oregon's offense and Penn State offense are night and day. I'm not going to say they're compared at all because Penn State, in my opinion, is an average football team, above average. They've beaten a lot of bad football teams. But the Buckeyes went in there with a focus and a determination to dominate. And down 10-0, they regrouped, they ran the football down Penn State's throat, and they played amazing defense, showing that they are a true legit threat for a national championship because this team found ways to win. We know they had the receiving talent, but they won in a different way. Looking at Iowa State, we've been talking about how great they were, and they didn't have the magic. It's that one game where we kind of figured, were they going to slip up? Were they good enough? And Texas Tech rallied the troops and got them. Right. Mm-hmm. Miami being down early and then having, again, another resilient comeback to, being down, I think, 11 points and then smoking, Duke. And I think it was 21.5 and they won by 22, which is funny. Like, it was right there. Virginia Tech, Syracuse. Virginia Tech, they were still in the conversation, and then they go up and, lose in overtime to Syracuse. Clemson getting run. Texas A&M, all the love in the world coming down to Aggie Land and going to Gamecocks, play the Gamecocks, going to Williams-Brice and getting absolutely curb stomped. Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks, they have at least two of them. We saw it coming. They had all game versus LSU early on in the year. Should have beat Alabama, should have beat LSU, dominated a terrible Oklahoma team. You kind of felt that one coming where they were just ready to get the full thing done. They put it on. Georgia, Carson Beck is the biggest issue I have right now. In that first half, this is the second week in a row where you come out and you throw multiple interceptions in the first half, kind of put your team at a disadvantage. Now we're getting the flow going. Statistically, you dominate the entire game, but you're spotting teams' possessions, you're spotting teams' points. You can't have that versus Ole Miss, can't have that versus Tennessee. You can't have that anywhere down the road. Him getting comfortable in the pass game is going to have to be something that Bobo and him and that entire offensive staff work on. Receivers catching the football. Georgia's defense, I think they're going to be just fine. But that right there, part of the entire team. But the passing game itself, Carson Beck throwing and making terrible decisions. These aren't just balls bouncing off guys' hands anymore. These are being thrown into double and triple coverage. Maybe it's the NFL money, thinking in the future too much of that and not thinking about the time and place where he's currently at, where his feet are at. Maybe thinking I have too much NIL money, I've got to prove myself and live up to that, and making bad decisions or trying to force the ball. But 2 weeks in a row, multiple interceptions early, and then later on making big throws and big time plays in the second half to finish out football games. But you put yourself in bad, terrible situations early on, which you start playing better football teams like Ole Miss and Oxford this upcoming week, or playing the balls in 2 weeks. You're going to cost your team dearly losing a ball game. That's going to be fixed for Georgia if they want to win down the road. But there's a lot of you're starting to see teams where there's a separation mentality. You're starting to see some of the teams that we thought were mids are starting to fade. Just the depth is not there anymore. Injuries catching up. Other teams are starting to see flaws a little more, profound. I did a lot of thinking today before as I wrap up. Ohio State and Georgia were almost mirror images of each other this week. Their passing attacks were less than stellar. Quarterbacks weren't exactly up for the challenge. Running games were very strong when they needed it late in the second half, and defenses stood tall. In cold weathers for a playoff game, that's going to be great. Playoff games down the road, you might need that. But the passing game can have to eventually become a factor consistently from the first quarter to the fourth quarter if you want to win a national championship. But there's a lot of things that are still involving, and November is going to tell us even more than we've seen in October.
Fresh, the one thing I was waiting for you to touch on, when are we going to know Indiana 9-0, 47-10 in East Lansing, scored the final 40. They were down 10-0 and scored 47 unanswered.
I have them ranked number 7 in my top 25, which is on spinablesports.com if you want to check that out and blast me for it. I still want to see them versus Ohio State. Obviously they dominated Nebraska. They've took care of Washington when game day was there. They took care of, Michigan State. They got Michigan this week, I believe. I don't really expect Michigan to give them much of a fight consistently to that ball game. Eventually they'll wear them down, especially with Johnson potentially being out. But that Ohio State game, that's going to tell me the story. Dan Mullen said Indiana's the second best team in the Big Ten. I want to see Indiana in the awe of a Ohio State, in the awe of a Michigan, seeing the logo on the field, the logo across from them, understanding the expectations. That's what I want to really get the test going for. Because right now we see the talent offensively, we see the talent defensively, but they haven't had that, oh crap, that's Ohio State, oh crap, that's the Michigan logo. Because sometimes that logo itself does something to a team that hasn't been there before. And if they can get over that hurdle with Michigan dealing with that logo, and they can face and show up and play a solid game versus Ohio State, win or at least compete in a high level, then I will truly be sold on them as a legit playoff team. Right now, that's the only outlier because coaching, the offense, the defense, they've shown to me all the way. But how do they handle the spotlight that's continuing getting bigger for them against more profound and historic logos they're going to face down the stretch?
Yeah. And Rourke, man, that dude's been on fire. Coming from the Ohio Bobcat transfer. 4 touchdowns on the day.
Dominated in action, and he's showing up and making plays under Shinetti.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fresh. Well, before we go any further, if you made it this far, ladies and gentlemen, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, because we're going to cruise all the way through the end of the season. We're cruising all the way down to rivalry week, which is our most exciting week of the year. But we decided to do something a little bit different. Well, I actually decided to do something a little bit different here. Fresh is going to be reacting. We have reached out to a large chunk of our listeners and asked them to give us their top 12 to make our first ever college football playoff committee rankings. These are from our listeners, people who interact with us, engage with us. So make sure you're engaging with us on the social media, on the X. It's interesting, Fresh, because we got a lot of things I think you'll expect. Fresh has not seen these ratings. He has not seen anywhere where teams are ranked. So we're going to get his unbiased, unfiltered reaction.
I'm biased. I'm going to say right now, I'm biased.
All right. So with that being said, this is our initial college football playoff ranking. The rankings are going to come out for real here shortly. Fresh receiving the number 1 overall seed. I don't think there's any shock right now about this pick here. It's the Oregon Ducks. They were almost a unanimous number one. They're going to be the Big Ten champion here. They're going to get that first round bye, and they're going to be playing in the Rose Bowl according to this right now.
Bold statement that they are going to be the Big Ten champion on November 3rd. I think right now they are the number one team in the country. If they get a rematch versus Ohio State in a neutral site, that will be interesting to see how that plays out. But right now, I think they are, at this moment, on November 3rd, date of record, they are the number one team in the country, and they have been very, very impressive.
The number two team in the country is out of the SEC. It is the Georgia Bulldogs. They would get a first-round bye, and they would be going to the Peach Bowl in the second round there.
I'm number two myself. Carson Beck has shown in the past that he can make throws. He's got to get more confident, and the running game is going to have to be the carry forward for this entire football team. Minimize his down the field throws. He's had trouble trying to extend the football down there. Take the checkdowns, take the mid-range, short-range throws, keep it manageable, and allow the running game to really carry the team. The defenses continue to I think will get better. We're starting to see guys get healthy with the pass rush there. Still got two major tests with Ole Miss and Tennessee coming up. Those will not be walkovers at all. But it will, right now they're playing really good football.
All right. The number three team, this is going to be the ACC champion. It is the Miami Hurricanes. Again, I don't think there's much surprise there. They were actually the fifth-rated team, but because of the conference champion bias, we're going to give them the ACC bye right now. They would be number three. They would be going to the Sugar Bowl to face the winner of the 6-11 matchup.
I have the Hurricanes at my fifth overall team, and I also have them as my ACC leader at this point. The only thing that scares me about Miami is that defense has a lot of holes in it. They have not shown consistency, but they have the firepower to make comebacks. They are going to win shootouts. If someone gets physical with them at the line of scrimmage, that's the one thing that kind of worries me. But let's say if they play to Georgia, Georgia is not very good as mobile quarterbacks. That might be pretty, accepting for Cam Ward to be able to get on the edge. But they might want to watch out for SMU if they get SMU in the ACC title game. That could be a nice little shootout. And if that ever happens, take the over, folks. That game might hit 100 points.
Right, absolutely. All right, the number 4 seed is out of the Big 12. They are the lowest rated conference champion here. It's the BYU Cougars out of the Big 12. They would be going in playing in the Fiesta Bowl. They're fresh. Thoughts on BYU getting the last bye?
I have BYU as my current Big 12 leader. I have them 11th overall in my top 25. They've accepted every test. They've beaten everyone they've had to play so far. There's been multiple times they've gone on the road, and Vegas has made them the underdog, and they've won going away, like Baylor and like UCF. They were both underdogs in those two trips. They keep proving people wrong. They do have the Holy War coming up this week versus Utah. It's not the same Utah team we've seen in the past. They're a little beat up and a little maybe depth, but if they just keep chugging along, and they'll be doing, they have the talent, they have the confidence to keep moving. But the Big 12, we've seen with K-State losing, Iowa State losing, Arizona State's showing some flashes, Colorado's still out there. That story is far from being told completely at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. BYU is the one that benefits the most from the first round bye with the conference champions. They were rated 9th. If we took the top 12, how people had rated them, they were in the 9th spot, but they jumped all the way up to the 4th spot because they are the highest rated Big 12 team. All right, so our first matchup, our first home game matchup, this would be the 5-12 matchup here. They would be playing BYU. This game is in Columbus, Ohio, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're actually the number 3 rated teams behind Oregon and Georgia. Fresh, no shock at Ohio State being number 5. But I think it is a little bit of a shock who we have traveling over there. It would be the group of 5 matchup. And I don't know if the committee would do this, but the group of 5, Boise State Broncos would be the 12 matchup. They're going to Ohio State.
Well, I think the committee would do that. That would be a TV ratings bonanza. Ashton Jeanty, potential Heisman Trophy winner, going to Columbus, take on the Buckeyes, take on the defense. That would be an amazing affair. I actually have Ohio State at 3, and I actually have that both these the 5 and 12 matchup in my my rankings and my prediction right now as it is. That would be a great test to truly get the attention of the Ohio State team as a whole. Because they're like, we hear all the talk about Boise State. They've done amazing. They played Oregon right to the very end. They only lost by 3. They showed up and they played hard. That'd be a great game in Columbus. I still want to see a little bit more from that Boise State offense outside of Genty. We got a little bit this past week. But playing an Ohio State defense, you're going to have multiple options out there. So how can they continue to keep evolving that offense and add more layers? Because we do get in the playoff, they're going to be playing much better teams consistently, and you're going to get everyone's full attention the entire time. Ohio State having that home game, that's going to be in a hostile environment. It's going to be a night game basically in Columbus. It's going to be cold. It's going to be rowdy. People are going to be sipping on some beers and some brown beverages for a while. How does that defense continue to keep getting better? And that offense, I just mentioned earlier, the running game is there. Will Howard has great legs. You have 2 amazing running backs. That passing game, Jeremiah Smith, Ibuka, their weapons are across the board. If the offensive line for Ohio State can stay healthy or get a little bit more improved health by the time the playoff comes, they should be a pretty solid force in that matchup.
Would you be more excited for that matchup or the possibility of either one of those teams playing BYU in the second round in the Fiesta Bowl?
I mean, if Boise State upset Ohio State and with Boise State BYU, that would be I think the odds on, because people still don't truly believe that they're both seem to be national contenders. So everyone would be glued in on that game. If Ohio State got that and then beat Boise State and they got a BYU, that's a best case scenario. That's a magical road for the Buckeyes. And I think Buckeye fans should be wanting that and begging for that across the board.
It's the benefit of being at the 5 spot, I think.
Because I think they would beat the trash out of BYU. And you got a home game, you make the revenue at home, the fans get that celebration, and then you basically get a trip down to play BYU. That would be perfect.
All right, man. This is where it gets kind of funky like a monkey here, baby. So we're going to go to the 6-11 matchup. These 2 teams are going to be playing for the right to go down to the Sugar Bowl to play the Miami Hurricanes. At number 6 came in the Texas Longhorns. They are actually the 4th-rated team behind Ohio State. Texas is going to be playing the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The Irish getting into the field by a 0.8 margin when we put a numerical value on it here, Fresh. Just barely. And I mean, it was really, really close. And we'll talk about the back half here in a little bit. But Texas versus Notre Dame for the right to play Miami in the next round. Thoughts on the matchup?
Well, the matchup that everyone's giving us here, I think I actually have Notre Dame a little higher ranked. They have looked impressive since that Northern Illinois loss. Now the loss is still going to hang the bounce, but they have come out and they've dominated people the way they dominated Navy. We get Florida State this week. They get Army later. They get USC. Like they're playing a little more up. That win over Texas A&M looks much more impressive as the year goes on because A&M has actually been pretty good. And I think Riley Leonard obviously has shown growth. Still going to be more in the passing game, but shown growth, and that defense is pretty solid. Benjamin Morrison, obviously not being on the team anymore due to injury, has a major hit to them down the road if they play a heavy passing team. I had Texas there at 6. I think a Texas offense versus that Notre Dame defense would be a fun affair, especially in Austin. They've gone on the road already once to Texas, in the state of Texas, and pulled off a slugfest. How could they go out there with the defense again, contain and attack Quinn Ewers / Arch Manning and that bevy of talent they have on that side of the ball? But I think Texas' defense is the true determining factor. Their defense is better against that Notre Dame offense, and that would right there be the push. I think Texas would win that matchup. My matchup actually is I have SMU as the 11th seed. I think SMU sort of slides in. They can finish out the rest of the year and go to the ACC title game. An SMU at Texas game would be a lot of fun because it is obviously a battle in the state of Texas, and I'd be a nice recruiting war. But either way, the way these first round matchups on the home sites are going to be, they're going to be spicy and they're going to be awesome because you have that home element. It's not a neutral site, and getting some of those different ways they're going to be matching up and moving around. And I guarantee for TV ratings, the committee might move some of those matchups, move those teams in that ranking to have some of those matchup highlights a little better. They might not be what you actually think those are going to be. And that's where, hey, could you get a Texas Notre Dame matchup in Austin?
Right.
That they might do that on purpose to have that entertainment factor.
Right. Who do you think the TV markets would want more? Again, Texas versus Miami will probably be the better matchup, but which one is the better story at the end of it? Texas Miami or Notre Dame Miami? That's a tough one, isn't it?
Texas Miami, because Notre Dame Miami, it's not the 80s or it's not the 90s anymore. Early 2000s, the whole Catholics versus convicts, that thing. Folks, Miami doesn't have a fan base. They don't have a fan base. They are bandwagon fans. They're not showing up. The stadium was empty versus Duke, and this team's undefeated this past weekend. They are not a fan base that really cares. They're not going to watch on TV unless they're playing for a national championship. It's not something that's going to draw a market or draw huge numbers. If it was Notre Dame, Texas, those are the two heartbeats that are going to drive, number one, buying tickets and TV revenue and TV, eyes. Miami is just they're an old logo. They're a has-been. They're one pop on the radar this year. When Cam Ward's gone, I don't really see them sustaining the success, and they don't have the fan base to really contribute to really drive a numbers or attendance factor.
All right, Fresh. We're going to a 7-10 matchup here. This is for the right to play Georgia in the Peach Bowl. At 7, it's the Penn State Nittany Lions versus the SMU Mustangs. Talk to me a little bit about the Pony Express going all the way up to Happy Valley.
I mean, I'm starting to become a believer. You've been on them all year long. I think I just told her I had them up the 11th spot to go play Texas. That team continues to show progress, growth. They're not scared of the moment. They did get a huge benefit by Louisville taking down Clemson this past weekend and open up that path, a clear path now to the ACC title game. The ball's in their court. So if they can get to the ACC title game and not get blown out, I think they're in the playoff field. And that's the thing, not get blown out. If they get beat by 30 plus, then we're like, okay, maybe they're not worth the top 12 spots in the country. But the ball's in their court. It's theirs to lose as a playoff spot perspective. Jennings can keep burning that offense, keep finding a way to turn out points. They built a huge lead on Pitt. Pitt got some points late in garbage time. Like, it was late. They were playing a lot of, heavy coverage and let them get back in the ballgame. But they put their foot down pretty quick on the Panthers to get after it there in that game. So just keep the course, stay the course. But that offense for Penn State defense will be a lot of fun, especially up in Happy Valley in the crazy environment. Actually, just so everyone knows, I actually had Penn State as my 7 seed, and my 10 seed was Tennessee. I want to see the Vols go to Happy Valley. I think that would be an amazing little fun matchup. They obviously, the first ever night game in Knoxville was Penn State coming down to take on the Vols. How about the Vols go to Penn State for the first ever Hispanic playoff? That would be a really cool experience.
It would be. And they were really close. Again, that 7 through 10 was very close. But again, we'll talk a minute here after we get through the final matchup, especially the 10 through 15 of the teams that didn't make the cut, who are just on the outside looking in, is very, very close as well. All right, Fresh, the last matchup we have, the 8-9 matchup. This is for the right to go to the Rose Bowl and play at Pasadena. The 8 seed is the Tennessee Volunteers going up against the upstart Indiana Hoosiers. The game is in Knoxville. Two offenses that would, again, take the over in that game.
I don't know. Tennessee's defense has been electric.
They've been pretty good.
This will be, I feel like Ohio State's defense is better than Tennessee's, but they're pretty close. That Ohio State-Indiana matchup, that was going to be a great gauge for them on how they're going to be successful. If they can play really tough with Ohio State, going to Knoxville is going to be an experience because that crowd is going to be raucous. And I think I'm understating that term. But it will kind of take the shock off of playing an elite program with this team and the upstart mentality they had. That right there, though, will be a fun experience. Knoxville is a hostile environment. And if Indiana can run the football, play within it, get an early lead, eventually, you can compete there if you want. Florida competed there. They should have won that ball game. We all saw that. But that team, that fan base, they are primed for some success. It's been a while. So Tennessee can get that done, host a playoff game. You better come in there with a game plan ready to go, and don't let the balls get an early lead because it'll be unbearably loud as it continues to snowball if you get behind at any point in the game.
Yeah. And we have 3 teams that are on the outside looking in right now. All of these teams received votes into the top 12, but didn't receive enough to get into there. And it was the Alabama Crimson Tide. They were 0.8 away from replacing Notre Dame. So it became within 1 point of them being in at Notre Dame at number 11 because Boise State would have the 12 seed there as well. Boise State and Alabama were separated by 0.2. Boise State was a touch higher, but separated by 0.2 on that one as well. Iowa State was the 14th team. They were a little bit further back, and then Ole Miss was the 3rd team of the teams still receiving votes. No other team besides those received votes.
Interesting that Ole Miss got votes. Man, they're a great football team, but 2 losses already. 1 to Kentucky, 1 to LSU. LSU has 2 losses, and they're not getting any mention in any pub. A&M, who beat LSU, who beat Ole Miss, is not getting a love, and they have 2 losses and 1 to Notre Dame. It's just interesting how Ole Miss has an amazing offense, and I think they have the attention of the nation after what they did to Arkansas. That's a fringe team. They're playing for their lives versus the Dogs on Saturday. We'll have that preview coming for you later on. If they beat Georgia, obviously, I think that puts them in a serious spot as a fringe playoff team because then you have one of the best wins of the season of anyone in the country on your resume. If they lose, I think they're done. So this is a desperate Ole Miss football team in Oxford on Saturday afternoon. And I think that's what Georgia's going to have to be their focus right here, being prepared for that effort that's going to come to you because they're going to bring everything. Iowa State, I want to see how they respond because they have played with fire all year long. They were down early in the first half to Iowa, and they had an amazing comeback on a big-time touchdown, kind of got that going. They've been playing well. They haven't been spectacular. I want to see how they respond to this 1-point loss at home. If they come out and dominate the next team and sort of stacking wins and go beat Kansas State, all right, I'm a believer. Is the hiccup? Yeah, deal with it. If that kind of perfect storm hits where they have 1 becomes 2 becomes 3, then we'll know the answer at that point.
Right.
Alabama question, that is Vanderbilt lost. The way they played versus Texas, the way they've done, I think that makes it looks good. Losing to Tennessee, but you also have beat Georgia. So you have, 2 quality losses. You don't have bad losses. You have quality losses, and you have a very good win on your record. How they play LSU on Saturday night down in Baton Rouge. If they win, I think that kills building their resume. If they lose, obviously that's their 3rd loss. And it's going to be very tough to come back to this. So we have a lot of we're getting to a point where teams are getting desperate. Number 1, they're on fringes, or number 1 to stay somewhere in a comfortable spot in that playoff ranking perspective. Yeah, it's going to be you're going to start seeing some teams take a little more chances now because they are in that fringe perspective of how do you get that next win, how do you keep your hopes alive down the stretch.
I think what hurt Alabama was actually the South Carolina game. I think because South Carolina was winning that football game, and they pulled it out at the last minute, that could have been – a lot of people would look at that and say you could have been on a 3-game losing streak. Heck, the Georgia game bounces the other way. Yeah. That could be a 4-game losing streak.
I think that shows their resilience, though. They found ways to win those games.
Right.
They could easily have 4 losses, though.
Yeah. I thought our voters did a really good job here on Fresh. You had, again, these were the averages. Like some people would have certain teams higher and lower.
One question, because you obviously give me some rankings.
Yeah.
If Boise State lost another game and they didn't win the Mountain West, who's the next highest group of 5 that anyone gave you? Or did anyone give you anyone else?
No one.
So basically they're saying Boise State's a lock to win the Mountain West and get that spot. They're not going to get usurped by Army or Tulane or anyone like that.
Yeah, I can't see. The only one I could possibly see is Army. But in order for Army to take over the spot from Boise State, they have to beat Notre Dame. And then there's a domino effect too. I think if Notre Dame falls out, Army would jump in to the Boise spot maybe. That's if Boise loses and Army takes over there. But then you start to see those teams that were after that, the Alabama, Iowa State, Texas A&M, LSU maybe. There's a couple other teams that are right there on the fringe. You could see one of those teams. Again, another team that's kind of laying in the weeds that has looked really good as of late. They only have one conference loss is Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado's looked really good. What kind of happens with them? Because, again, if TV ratings come into this thing, Colorado definitely gets views. So,
yeah, the Colorado keeps showing improvement, and if they play for the Big 12 title, I think everyone in the country will be rooting for Colorado to take down BYU. So that'll be an interesting scenario. And at that point, if Colorado wins, they're a lock. Does the committee put somebody else over BYU just because they don't have the record anymore? They're not just the default champion. Because, if they win, are they truly a sexy best 12 in the country?
heartbeat.
I'm not 100% certain on that. We will see down the stretch. I think Colorado has that backing, which gives them the extra oomph.
Yeah. Well, this was fun, Fresh. I really wanted to get your take as we were going to go through this as well. Some people were very heavy one way or another. But really, those top 6 teams were pretty consistent. If you take a look at Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Miami, and BYU, that really made up almost everyone's top 6. Yeah, there may be a little bit of change in the order. They might have flipped Miami, BYU, or, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia. But those 6 spots were pretty locked in. I thought that was pretty interesting that we saw some consistency there. It was really the back half where things started to get a little bit hairy. But again, everyone had Tennessee on their ranking. Everyone had Penn State as well. I believe everyone also had Indiana. I'm just going back into my notes real quick. Yes, everyone else had Indiana as well. So those were 3 teams that everyone had.
So now we're talking about playoff teams. A question for you. After this past weekend, James Franklin now is 1-14 versus top 5 opponents at Penn State.
Yep.
In games versus top 5 opponents, Penn State is scoring 17.5 points a game. And his only win was in 2016 over Ohio State. And he's 1-10 versus Ohio State. He's lost 11 straight top 5 matchups. How much pressure is on him right now going forward? Because they're not going to probably have a top 5 matchup or rest of the regular season. Probably if they win a first round playoff game, they're going to obviously get another top 5 matchup. What does James Franklin have to do to really keep the heat off him at Penn State?
I think, one, if he makes the playoff, I think that it will buy him one more year. I don't necessarily know, though, if there's a way he can keep that heat off of him. Now, the weird thing is that Penn State, I talked to a Penn State fan actually early today prior to recording this, and him and I got into a discussion, and I asked him, do you feel like the boosters and the university are done with James Franklin? And he kind of real quickly shut me down on that. And I said, no, I don't think they're done at all. I think that they really like him there at Penn State and that they're really happy with what he does. I think they get the sense that he eventually will finish one of these wins out. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it was really interesting to see their fan take going, yeah, it just kind of has been the bugaboo, but we just really don't know where else we can go to, what else we can do. And I think the biggest fear is now with the transfer portal, when you have when you brought in, because Penn State's brought in top 10, top 15 recruiting classes, there's a lot of talent on that football team. Mm-hmm. The minute you make a coaching change, it opens the portal window for anyone on that team to leave immediately within 30 days of that. I think that fact alone will pause more teams of making coaching changes, because you got to be able to have someone in line before you make that move that will keep the majority of your roster intact. And even a great hire like Alabama loses Nick Saban to retirement. They get a great head coach in Kalen DeBoer, probably one of the best young up and coming coaches that was out there at the time. Okay. They're not, Alabama wasn't going to pry Kirby away from Georgia. They're not going to get.
They weren't getting Dabo from Clemson.
No, they weren't. Right. So they get a great young and up and coming head coach. And even then, he keeps majority of that roster intact, but he still loses a good chunk of those players. I think that may cause some athletic directors to maybe wait even longer than they would have in the past before you could have lost a good chunk of your rosters due to the coaching changes.
Now, kind of that. If you make a good hire, though, the kids aren't going to leave. They aren't going to immediately jump until they find out who the new head coach is. So, right. In most cases. So, if you're making a stellar hire, that is null and void. If you make an average hire, then you might run the course of losing some guys.
But who would be that stellar hire?
Heartbeats are
well,
right now for Penn State.
But James Franklin, it doesn't matter. James Franklin's not getting the job done. He was gifted a Rose Bowl because Michigan and Ohio State, who can't beat, were in the playoff.
I agree with
you. He hasn't done anything, so maybe you just need to change the house completely. He's gotten them to he's maxed out his experience at Penn State, in my opinion.
So you just say, forget it. We'll tear it down to studs.
Their offense is very average. I mean, Tyler Warren's no Brock Bowers, but he should not be the leading receiver on the football team. Singleton and Allen, as great as they are, they're not hitting the highlight reels every single week. They were non-existent on Saturday afternoon. Drew Allar, for all the highly heralded recruit he came in there, he hasn't done anything of note, truly, in my opinion, at Penn State. You're getting elite defensive players every single year, but yet when the big games come, they don't show up. This is a institutional issue from the top down where you've got to start making. All right, you love bring up Mark Richt in Georgia where he hit a threshold. This is as far as you can go. James Franklin has hit that threshold.
Right.
And you're going to out competing. Whether it's Michigan or Ohio State, now you have to compete with Oregon. If USC gets rid of Lane Kiffin, which Lincoln Riley, like they should, that they have the resources to become better than Penn State. Penn State is losing that ground in a national landscape, and they need to find ways to change their mentality. They are still stuck in the Joe Paterno, rugged linebacker we're going to run the ball down your throat mentality, which is great if you want to win the 10 games. But now we're talking you have got to win 12, or be in the 11 to 12 win threshold and beat good teams when you're actually facing them. I mean, how much more times you keep losing top 5 teams where I don't care what you're doing, it's got to change at some point.
I don't disagree with you there. I think yes, I do like bringing up the Mark Richt comparison because Mark Richt is a great example of that. But Georgia has
both of them are great men. That's the thing. They're great men. They're wholesome dudes. But they're just that one thing they can't get over the top. And I think the one element of the point. James Franklin had leads on Ohio State 7 times. In those
3 times were double digits.
3 were double digits. It's not like you're getting blown every time. You had opportunities, and you can't get it done.
Right. But I think the difference in the situation, the only difference I see between the two, is that Georgia could look across over to Nick Saban's staff, see DC Kirby Smart, who's a Georgia alumni, and go, that's an easy hire. That's a slam dunk hire. Yeah. I think that's where the nuance of the whole situation.
Beg Paul Puzzle or LeVar Arrington to become a head coach and put him on staff. But they've got to find someone to take them back to the next step. I think they all are kind of still living in the Joe Pa shadow.
Right.
But someone's got to break the trend. You've got to be different. Look what Cinetti did at Indiana. He went to a program that's been terrible for years and changed the mentality already. Jonathan Smith, it's going to take a while, but he's going to change at Michigan State. You've got to go in and be the overhaul and just buck the trend.
Who's at Washington State right now? I don't know their coach off the top of my head. You're better at that than I am.
Gosh. I'm drawing a blank. He's been there for 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah, they're 7-1. That could definitely be a possibility with him. I don't know who that is off the top of my head. I have to look it up here, but
yeah, I'm drawing a blank on him right now.
Yeah, but Fresh, I think it's an interesting conversation. It's definitely something we're going to need to watch going into the off season here.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point right now where you've got to start winning the bigger games. You can afford a loss in the playoffs in the regular season that once here or there, but the playoff time where you start to play better teams. How is your team going to function when the game's on the line? Are they truly prepared? Are you prepared for your game management as well? And be able to overcome some. I mean, there were some situations maybe like that James Franklin brought up in that football game that maybe didn't go Penn State's way. But how are you getting the team to stay focused the entire time to fight through and to complete and end the football game with a W as opposed to a loss?
Yeah. Jake Dickert is the guy's name at Washington. He might be on a lot of people's radar here probably this upcoming offseason. I would not be shocked.
Heartbeats are actually like, would Matt Campbell leave Iowa State for Penn State?
Heartbeats. Maybe. Heartbeats. He loves Iowa State. Heartbeats. He really loves Iowa State.
It's off the radar. He's done a great job there, but imagine getting more resources at Penn State with what he can do.
Right.
Heartbeats.
Dickert from Washington State. Heartbeats. You know where he would be really interested in?
Heartbeats.
I bet you if Wisconsin ever moved on from Fickle, I bet you he'd be really interested. He's a Wisconsin guy.
He's from Wisconsin, yeah. So that would be, he didn't go to Wisconsin, but he's from Wisconsin.
No, he's from the Wisconsin area.
Homecoming, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. Well, this has been a fun one, but we will roll back into our preview for week number 11 coming right at you, not too far away. We wanted to have some fun with the College Football Playoff Committee rankings that are coming out. Want to give our takes. Want to say a special thanks to all of our listeners who participated, who were able to join in with us, give us their top 12 ranking. It made this a whole lot of fun to see where everyone else was different, where people had things the same. I enjoyed this thoroughly, Fresh. I was real excited to do this with you. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, because get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Make sure you're checking out spinablesports.com. Yes, that's spinablesports.com, because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of spinablesports.com. Make sure you engage with us on the X, on the social media. We like talking to you guys. We put some stuff out there as well. Check out Fresh's articles every week. That's all I got, Fresh.
All right.
It's been a good week.
Another fun week of college football in the books. We're at the point right now, win in advance, survive in advance. Doesn't matter if it's ugly or spectacular. Just keep chugging along toward the conference championship weekend. It's always good to beat the Gators. Never mad about that at all. And with that, bye, y'all.